He could have brought his floor charts out here and given a withering speech about all of the things that he thought went wrong. But he's doing a very specific thing. He is damaging the Department of Defense. We have senior DOD leaders. We have the Armed Services Committee coming to us and saying, I don't know what to tell him. I don't know how to satisfy him, but he is blocking the staffing of the senior leadership at the Department of Defense. And this comes from a guy who raised his fist in solidarity with the insurrectionists. And this comes from a guy who, before the Russian invasion, suggested that maybe it would be wise for Zelensky to make a few concessions about Ukraine and their willingness to join NATO. This comes from a guy who just about a month ago voted against Ukraine aid. He's saying it's going too slow. He voted no. He voted no on Ukraine aid, and now he has the gall to say it's going too slow. And this final insult is that until, what, Secretary Austin resigns? That's not a serious request. People used to come to me during the Trump administration all the time. Do you think Trump should resign? Do you think Tillerson should resign? That's a stupid, of course, I think all the people I disagree with should quit their jobs and be replaced with people I love. Of course, I think they should all resign. That's not how this world works. That is not a reasonable request from a United States senator that until the Secretary of Defense quits his job, I'm going to block all of his nominees. That's preposterous. And coming from a person who exonerated Donald Trump for extorting Zelensky for withholding lethal aid. They withheld lethal aid unless Zelensky would release false smears against Joe Biden's son. And then he voted to exonerate President Trump for this. And so spare me the new solidarity with the Ukrainians and with the free world, because this man's record is exactly the opposite.
Dear God, if Josh Hawley was capable of shame, it would be really difficult for him to show his face after this. This is Hawaii Senator Brian Schatz excoriating Republican Senator Josh Hawley for his continued slow walking of Biden Pentagon nominees, all as part of his political posturing that he'll point to during his inevitable run for president. And just to be clear, these nominees will eventually be discharged. It just takes weeks and months longer and a lot of extra procedural steps by Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, including at least 2 floor votes. Among the nominees most recently blocked were the Pentagon's top international security official, the Pentagon's #2 research and engineering official, and the official heading up Homeland Defense issues. And I'm not a national security expert, but you would think that having these slots filled at a time when we're contending with Russia and China and North Korea and Iran might be, oh, I don't know, moderately important. But the craziest part here is that he's doing this while condemning the Biden administration for not doing enough. And yet he's the one blocking Defense Department officials. After Zelensky addressed Congress, Hawley went on Fox News and said, quote, "This administration has got to show some leadership," and then voted against $13.6 billion in lethal and humanitarian aid to Ukraine. You could land a plane in the space between what Josh Hawley says and what Josh Hawley does. And to top things off, this is the guy who voted to exonerate Donald Trump for withholding military aid to Ukraine. He thought that was okay, and yet when Biden tries to fill Pentagon leadership so that the US can best support Ukraine, he blocks them. When Biden tries to send billions to Ukraine to defend itself, he blocks that. Would Hawley prefer if Biden withheld that money until he could extract some political benefit for himself? Because apparently that's the secret sauce to curry favor with Republican senators. But let's be honest here, this isn't about Hawley's concern for the Pentagon or national security. This is about Hawley's concern for Hawley. His only priority is hurting this administration because he thinks it'll help his partisan bona fides with the base to make his Democratic colleagues' lives more difficult. Forget that making his Democratic colleagues' lives more difficult is actually making Americans' lives more difficult and Ukrainians' lives more difficult and putting real people in real danger. All of that is a price that Josh Hawley is bravely willing to pay in order to help himself politically. You would think that if Hawley was actually actually trying to prove that he's capable of being a leader, it might occur to him that exposing himself for the morally bankrupt partisan hack that he is might not be the best way to launch his inevitable presidential campaign. It is a sad testament to what the Republican Party has become, but also a warning to all Americans that this is the best the GOP's got to offer. And so if you don't want someone like this to hold power, then it's incumbent on all of us to stay engaged, stay energized, and vote to keep this country out of the hands of people like Josh Hawley. To see more videos like this, click the subscribe button right here on this screen. And if you want to support my work, subscribe to my podcast, No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen. I cover the most important stories each week, and my guest is always one of the top political figures, including Vice President Kamala Harris, Jen Psaki, Elizabeth Warren, Pete Buttigieg, Nancy Pelosi, Katie Porter, Cory Booker, and so many more. The podcast link is also right here on this screen, so give it a listen and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts.